we're back. I'm Lisa Haverly here, Nature Superhero Network, and I'm so excited. We're going to continue with our interviews, and I have with me today, so it's Dr. Cherie Graves, really, correct?
It is.
It is. And so, and if I read my information correctly, you have your PhD in educational leadership. Is that?
Yes.
Yes. And so tuning in today from Minnesota.
Yep.
Grand Forks.
East Grand Forks.
East Grand Forks, Minnesota. And so that means it's kind of right on the border between North Dakota and Minnesota.
Exactly.
So probably, I don't even know how many hours north of me, but north and a little bit west. So I'm tuning in from Hudson, Wisconsin. And so I met Cherie originally when I supervised two doctoral students in the winter of, that probably was 2022, I believe, with Caitlin and Danielle. I think
that was correct. Yep.
And so, and she's a clinical supervisor for University of North Dakota, and she's contributed in that way, even in some publications. I forget, it's like the multiple student model or the collaborative model of supervision.
Yeah.
And so please look her up. She has contributed to the field of OT in many ways. But of course, why I have her on here today is that she also loves nature and believes in collaborating with nature to serve children. And recently kind of is going to take kind of a bigger step toward this new direction. Along with her other work that she's doing, kind of doing that side gig thing, if you will. And so I'm really pleased and excited to welcome Cherie Graves to this interview today. And she's going to kind of give you a little bit more background about who she is, how she arrived to kind of today. And so welcome, Cherie. And if you could just offer up your kind of OT history, where you started, that would be wonderful.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. It's very exciting, a little surreal to be with you and visiting with you. So super excited about that. So my OT journey, I graduated from the University of North Dakota program in 2006 and originally from South Dakota. So found my way back to South Dakota and I actually practiced in rural Minnesota, lived in South Dakota, practiced in rural Minnesota for my first. It was less than a year, but it was really a very true rural practice where I did a little bit of everything, but all within the adult realm, but everything from hospital, skilled nursing, home health, outpatient, ACMED. So it was a really great first job and intro to a lot of variety of practice settings. So that was awesome. The hard part was driving and commuting in the winter from, 35 miles or so on county roads. So it kind of got tiresome. So I transitioned to a full-time role at a large hospital system in Sioux Falls. So then I was commuting about 20 miles from the town that we were living in. And I primarily worked in acute care and inpatient rehab for the 7 years or so that I was there. And I loved it. I learned so much. It's amazing to me how much you can learn in those kinds of settings. And still, even after the 7 years, I was still learning something new every single day. And that, I think, is why I just loved it so much, because there was so much opportunity to learn. At that time, I was kind of starting to think about, I knew I wanted to go back and teach at some point. I knew that even when I was a student, I just loved the idea of teaching and being a teacher. And I love school and learning. And obviously that's why I'm still learning and doing new things all the time. So I started my PhD program in the fall of 2013. Okay. So really that was only about 7 or so years after I graduated with my master's. So, and that was a weekend cohort. So I was continuing to work full-time at the hospital and then doing my weekend cohort classes. So, but that really only continued another semester, and then a full-time job opened up at University of North Dakota doing fieldwork coordinating and teaching. And I was like, oh, wow, I didn't think that I would make that transition so quick to teaching, but I also knew that if I wanted to teach at UND, where I knew so was so familiar, it was like a second home to me. I knew that that was probably going to be my chance because there's not a lot of turnover in the faculty roles there, and I had to jump at it. So I actually, this is kind of funny. I actually didn't tell my husband that I applied at first because I didn't want him to start thinking that we were going to move up to Grand Forks if I didn't even get an interview.
Oh man.
So I eventually had to tell him, of course, because I got an interview. But yeah, so I got that job and we moved to Grand Forks in end of December of 2013. Started working there in January of 2014, and I have been there ever since. It's really hard to believe that this is like my 10th year of teaching there. The years just fly by, as everyone says, and everyone probably experiences too. Um, so I also gradually finished my PhD. So that was a long journey in and of itself, but gradually finished. I graduated with my PhD in August of 2019. So it was about 3 years of coursework, and then it took me about 3 years to finish my dissertation, which was a long time, but it was, with a family and
Yeah.
working full time, you just kind of do it what you can do. And I gradually did it, and it was a wonderful experience, and I would never do it again, but don't regret a minute of it. So yeah, and I just love learning, like I mentioned. Like I just feel like anybody who wants to do anything related to learning, to go for it, because I always think no one can ever take that away from you.
Yeah.
You will always carry that with you in some way. So that's kind of just how I see things about life and learning.
Oh,
But
yes. Yeah.
yeah. So yeah,
Awesome.
I've been teaching full time. So part of my role, when I first started, I was part-time, kind of part fieldwork coordinator, because there was also a full-time fieldwork coordinator. And then the rest was teaching. And now I am the full-time fieldwork coordinator, with a little bit less teaching. So kind of a combination of both things. So yeah, and I've been doing that now for probably 5 years or so, where I've been the full-time fieldwork coordinator. So and I love it. I love being able to partner with sites, love visiting with OTs and OTAs out in the community and all over. We partner with states, about 15 different states for fieldwork student placements. And so it's wonderful to build those relationships and partnerships and seeing what practice looks like in so many different settings.
Well, that's what got us connected. So
Yes,
otherwise we wouldn't have been connected. So
right.
it worked out
Yes.
quite well. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was lucky enough that my student that was Danielle was in our first cohort of OTD students, and she, for her capstone or experiential project, was super interested in doing something with nature-based OT. And I was just lucky enough to be her advisor. And yeah, she did all of the groundwork and finding you. And so that was pretty amazing.
Hi, Danielle, if you're watching.
Yes. Hi, Danielle.
I think she's in Wyoming now. So
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
awesome. All right. So you're doing that job, but now we have this thing called Nurtured in Nature that I would love for you to kind of touch on. So let's start with kind of what your nature connection is, and why nature. Why do you feel like that context or that environment works for OT?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
So my nature connection, as I was thinking about this question, I was like, gosh, I think my nature connection is just something that has grown stronger over time. I couldn't really think of any like really specific thing that sparked that interest. I lived on a farm for like the first 5 years of my life, so likely had lots of, interactions with nature and animals and things like that. Moved to Pennsylvania for 5 years, and we lived in an area that was really wooded and I mean, there was a creek in our backyard and a hill with trees. And of course, we lived in a kind of like a cul-de-sac type area. So there's lots of other kids. And we were always out there up in the hill playing on the trees and the rocks with the stream. I mean, I have so many memories of that experience. There's also like a pond or something down a gravel road. So we'd ride our bike down the gravel road and collect little newts. They had those little orange lizard things. So
Very
we'd collect newts.
cool.
Yeah, it was fantastic. I have such great memories of that. And then I was still pretty young. I was only 10 when we moved back to South Dakota, and we lived in a really small town, and we just had a lot of freedom. And as I think about that, it's so much more freedom than many kids have today in their hometown. And so I have so many good memories of being able to, be outside, ride my bike freely, just kind of go wherever I needed and wanted to go. And, of course, we didn't have technology like we do now, so we were outside more. That's what we did
Right.
all summer long. We were outside. So I just I just had a lot of kind of natural moments. We never were a family that did camping or skiing or snowmobiling or boating. Like we just, my mom and dad worked their tails off, sometimes even two jobs. And so we just worked with what we had. And
Right.
if we got to go fishing one day, like that was amazing to get to go
Yeah.
fishing. So I didn't grow up with those things, and I still don't, I love to fish now, but I still don't do a lot of those outdoor type things. I love to camp, but we don't go often. Um, so I think that's why I say it's just something that's strengthened over time.
Yeah.
Um, because I now more and more, I just have a greater appreciation for nature, even just seeing nature and hearing nature and being in nature. It doesn't mean I have to be out hiking the mountains,
Right.
or doing all these adventurous nature things, which are amazing.
Right.
My connection is more so just from um, I think I don't know if this is a good way to describe it, but maybe more of like an observer of nature.
Yeah.
Like I love to just be present in nature.
And I love that you explain it that way, because the reason I asked the question is it's not the same for everyone. It doesn't have to
Yeah.
be these profound experiences. We
Yeah.
talk about near nature, which could be just outside. And we have a similar kind of background. I too grew up in rural South Dakota. I think the population currently is 700. So you'll have to let me know where you grew up. So it's very central. I have, when you were saying riding your bikes all over town, I'm like, yep, that
Yeah.
was me. Ride to the swimming pool all by yourself, be there all day if you wanted. I mean, you heard the dinner bell and you knew it was time to come home.
Yeah.
So, but I do think nature connection can look many different ways,
Yeah.
even if it's from an appreciation or an observation standpoint, or just going outside, right outside your front door. Because nature's all around us. So it doesn't have
Yeah.
to be these profound experiences as far as, big adventures. You
Exactly.
can have a profound experience just being looking out your window or out your back door. So, thank
Yes.
you for sharing that, because I think that's important
Yeah.
for people to hear, that we don't have to be all these outdoorsy, nature people, right? To
Yeah.
really value nature or see it as a context for growth and development.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
thank you for that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anything you wanted to add more to?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think the idea for trying to incorporate working with kids out in nature, I think it roughly came about a few years ago, probably about 3 years ago. And of course, I think it's strengthened when I got to meet you and see all of the work that Danielle did through her capstone project, and then just start following people that are doing this work. I think my excitement for it just continued to grow. So I'm really, really thankful for that. But I think things that urged me to do that,
Yeah.
or to continue to pursue it, even though I knew that it was going to be difficult as a kind of a side gig, was going around my neighborhood. And I live in a very quiet neighborhood where there's lots of kids. But not seeing them outside was one thing. I just don't see them outside as much as we used to when we were little. And I know that those memories are so dear to me, and I want kids to have those memories. So that's one thing. And another one that I thought about was just um, how much more technology plays a role in the lives of our children,
Yes.
and trying to find that balance between the wonderful tool that technology can be, and also helping children to be outside and playing and connecting with each other and with nature. I think that's something that also urged me. And then the last thing I think that continued to kind of inspire me was my daughter Willow. She's 7, and she has ADHD, and has some challenges that are a little bit, a little bit more difficult to work with than my typical developing 12-year-old son. So um, I found that it's hard for me to find activities for her to participate in.
Mm. Okay.
Um, and not only because of the pressures of the activities, that even at 7 years old, the pressures are so high, but also the time commitment that many activities have, the time of day in which practices are. There was just a lot of things that really just didn't work for what we needed for her. And I think that creating something like this, where she and others can come and be who they are together in nature, there's just nothing more perfect than that. So she inspires me to, because I know, and one of my coworkers, we always think about this. We know that there's so many more willows out there in the world, and we want to be able to meet them.
Oh,
So,
I love that. That's beautiful. So
yeah,
that was your spark. That was
yeah,
kind of the tipping point where you said, I'm going to do this because,
yeah,
like you said, there's more than just one willow in the world, right? Yeah,
yeah,
that's
yeah.
beautiful. That's awesome. And so are you, so tell me the name of your business.
Yes. So my business is Nurtured in Nature, Minnesota.
Mhm.
And it took me a while to arrive at a name, but I just felt like, of course, I initially wanted to do something with Willow, because, of course, Willow is just such a nature name. But believe it or not, there's so many things with that name.
There are. Mm.
So I had to just go a little bit on the side. And I just felt like, wow, that's exactly what I hope for, is that for the people, the kids, the families, whoever it is that comes to me, I just hope for them to feel like it is a place where they can be nurtured. So I felt like it fit really well.
Awesome. And then tell me kind of what your programming will look like, or what services that you're going to start with, but maybe what you hope to grow into at some point.
Yeah.
What's your vision for your work?
Yes.
Yeah.
So I've had a lot of time to think about this since I've been dreaming about it for 3 years.
That's good.
Yes, yes, it is. So, just got my LLC earlier this month, really. So I haven't still working through all the logistics, so I haven't started services yet. But I'm going to be partnering with a ranch just across the river, also in East Grand. It's called Stable Days Youth Ranch.
Cool.
And it is a local nonprofit that provides different services for children and adolescents, and they may even serve some adults. And they use animal assisted therapy, and they have a ton of different animals. They have a full on garden out there, and but they don't have an OT out there. And she's always wanted an OT, and so yeah, I'm super excited that I'm gonna partner with her. I think my kind of where I'm going to start, because I needed to start small, because this is kind of a a side gig. So I have to set kind of some parameters. But my thoughts are that I will offer kind of like a single registration type of class offering, where people can come just and try it out, see what it's all about. And then maybe I would offer like a 1 day a week for a couple hour class for maybe 4 or 5 weeks. So like a weekly type of class session.
Yeah.
And then I'd love to be able to offer like a 4-day nature camp, like a half day programming nature camp. So it just kind of depends on how quickly I can get those things, especially for the half day, because if I'm going to do it this summer, I got to get things rolling and scheduled. So it just kind of depends on the timing of it. But those are the 3 areas I kind of think that I'm going to start. Open it up to anybody who is interested, and all children of all abilities. So I'm excited about that. And I think I will, even though there's so many resources available to me at the ranch, I'm still very much learning those things. So I definitely think it's going to be kind of a start where I'm a little more comfortable and with some nature free play, and gradually use those resources as I become more acquainted with what's around me and what's available, and also not to interrupt the services that are already happening there. I want to be very conscious of that, and the people that are already receiving services and those things. So yeah, that's kind of where I think I'm going to start. Long term, oh geez, I don't know. I think it kind
To
of,
be determined, maybe, because
yeah,
I mean, I
to be
really like
determined.
your mindset on you're going to start somewhere. And I mean,
Yeah,
and I've done this too. You just start and then you follow the need, or you say, wow, I see that, whatever the qualities are of that nature space, that would
yeah,
fit really well with this specific group. Yeah. And that it
yes,
evolves over time. And so
yeah.
I think that's a great approach. Yeah.
Yeah,
Good
yeah.
job.
And I love that idea of just, seeing, meeting a need that I think that is available or there now, and
Yeah.
just continuing to work with, the families and the community, and seeing what other needs come about, and
Right.
just kind of learning as I go, growing and learning as I go.
Absolutely. I do have one question that I'm wondering if listeners might have, and that's how you first established that connection with the ranch or the barn, and how maybe that came to be. If you had a connection or you just cold called
Yeah.
them and said, hey, can you share that kind of how that went
Yeah.
by?
Yeah, yeah. I did have a connection with the ranch through my university job, because we would partner with the ranch for a couple different student learning experiences. And they were pretty kind of more of a distant partnership with them, where the students would match with different community agencies. They would interview the community agency and establish the need and create something that would be helpful to the ranch. So we did this in one of the classes that I teach, and that's kind of how I got to meet um, the owner out there at Stable Days. And so it's really, and we did that partnership for 2 different spring semesters, and but I really didn't have anything more than that. It was really just kind of an acquaintance,
Sure.
because I wasn't the exact instructor that was facilitating the students learning. So that small group instructor would have had more hands-on with the ranch themselves, but I was one of the ones that kind of just created the initial partnerships, really.
Sure.
So
You will be
I just knew,
creating. Yeah, go ahead. No, go ahead.
I just knew that it was something that she was very excited to have people come to her space and use the space because of its wonderful affordances. I mean, it was just, there's so many things out there, and it's literally like 5 miles from town. So,
Wow, good location. And so,
yeah.
but you will be doing your own programming using their space and site, right? Or will you be collaborating with them? Or will it be,
No,
yeah,
yeah, I'll be doing my own programming.
yeah,
And she is very open to me using, her materials and her spaces and things like that. Eventually I think she would like for me to do more,
yeah,
to see more maybe one-on-one clients or other services, but I just don't, I think that I could do that right now. And work my full-time job because I have that commitment first.
Right. And so do you kind of have a verbal agreement, a written contract, or you just, is this just kind of a beta program where you're going to trial it and then come back together and then figure out maybe something that might work more on a regular long-term basis?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we don't have any contract drawn up yet. I went out back out to the ranch last week and visited, and we talked some more logistics and the liability pieces and figuring out what I need to include on the liability and those kinds of things. Um, we don't have a formal contract yet, but I imagine that that's going to come because I will, however I pay her for me using her space. So I'm not quite sure what that will look like, if that will be, like a flat rate per day that I use it, or so many hours, or if that will be a percentage of revenue from the groups. I'm not quite sure. So to
Yeah.
be determined as well.
Yeah. And then I think that's okay. I mean, especially when
Yeah.
it's something new, right? That you'll
Yes.
figure that
Yes.
out. So I'm going to look at my questions because I know we've
Yeah.
covered a few.
Yeah.
Because we're probably coming, we have a few more minutes here, but I just wanted, because there's other people listening that maybe they're are you 17 years in?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's right. Or even more. So it's never too late to do something different, right?
Yes.
So what kind of words of wisdom, in your whole OT journey, I know you already mentioned be a lifelong learner, right? I think
Mm-hmm.
that's one important thing that I heard you say that I also believe to be true. But if there's anything else that, if there's somebody just sitting on that fence going, wow, I would really love to do something in nature or collaborate with nature in some way. But,
Yeah.
the list of why not
Yeah.
or why I shouldn't is maybe longer than the
Yeah.
reasons of why maybe I should or could.
Yeah.
You say to that person.
Yeah, I was that person too.
Yeah.
There's always lots of questions and kind of doubts that peek in your mind there. I and another one that I had was because I never worked with children in an OT capacity. And so I wrestled with that as well. But I think how I finally came to view it was that I am using my OT lens for this programming that I'm going to be providing.
Right.
And I will continue to learn and grow in my OT lens.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to be creating an intervention plan. I'm not going to be doing the OT process per se. I'm not going to be evaluating, creating goals, um, reevaluating and discharging. So I won't be doing the true OT process. So I think that's one thing that was encouraging to me, having not experienced OT, pediatric OT, was this was really a great opportunity for me to continue to learn and build my OT view and my knowledge and my skills and just my understanding of children. So I think that, and if that's a barrier for anyone, just seeing different ways that you might be able to view it. I also kind of with that, I also viewed that now after so many years of practice, I also have a better understanding of understanding the need of the population, how to access resources to serve the population, how to use the evidence to serve myself in the programming. So I feel a little bit more equipped than I would have just starting out. So I think that has also helped me. Um,
And
and then a couple of
can I
things.
just
Oh,
say one more thing too?
yeah, of course.
How we use our OT skill set, right? And there is the population scope of practice and looking at the needs of your community and what are the needs, right? And so you've seen that there's no children outside, right? And you see that as a concern. And so what can you do to meet the needs so more children will come outside, and you are going to provide some programming for that to happen. So I just want to confirm that. But yes, and you were going to say a couple more things.
Yes, one other thing that I had written down as I was thinking about that question is that there will never be a perfect time to do something like this, or embark on any type of new personal journey or adventure or whatever it might be. And I remember thinking that when I started my PhD classes too, because I mean, I had a son at home who was like maybe two, but I just told myself there's really not going to be a perfect time. And, there's some times that are maybe more ideal than others. So trying to kind of capitalize on when maybe you're feeling like you're in a pretty good spot in other areas of your life, and comfortable with how other things are moving and going for you. I wouldn't want to jump into something new like this if my stress level was already, very maximized by other things going on.
Right. Oh, that's great advice. That is really good
Yeah.
advice. That if things are kind of set in some areas of your life, that you could have more capacity, right, to take on
Yes.
something new. Yeah.
Yeah.
There is not a never, I mean, there's never the perfect time. I mean,
Yeah.
definitely I have learned
Yeah.
that as well.
And the other thing I'd add is that there's just so many people out there willing to help and mentor and support. And that I have just been amazed by. And I think that in and of itself is so encouraging for somebody that might, be on the fence still.
Yeah. Awesome. Awesome. Thanks for that. Lots of good
Yeah, thank
nuggets
you.
there. So, and then just to kind of wrap things up, if you have a favorite nature space or a favorite quote that you would like to share, that is where we will end our time.
Yes. Um, my favorite nature space, like I think I feel them like my most favorite place is just being by a lake. Um, we don't have a lake here in this part of Minnesota, which is unusual, right? The land of 10,000 lakes, and the closest lake is over an hour away.
Wow, wow, that is a
But
long way.
it is. But we do have a couple rivers, so that's still great. So I just love seeing and being by a lake. So I don't know that I'd say it's my favorite because I can't access it very often. So my other most favorite place is here in my backyard because I can access this whenever I want. And so I kind of see it as two ways. Like, ooh, would I much rather be by the lakeside? Of course, but this is available to me now, and I am totally going to take advantage of it. So
We had the same idea. It's a nice day here too. So yeah.
it's so nice. Yes. In terms of a favorite quote, I was trying to think about this, and I don't think I have really a favorite quote, but I have really enjoyed reading a couple different authors slash poets. Mary Oliver is one, and she has often written pieces about nature or incorporating nature. So I've really enjoyed that. And then I've also recently come across an author by the name of Becky Hemsley. And I think she has a book that is specifically about nature. And I think it's called Into the Wild, I think. So I follow both those two, authors on Facebook, and I just kind of periodically check in and what's being shared. And I just find them inspiring.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, thank you for that. I feel like I'm going to have you back again as you continue this journey and share what else you have learned. And so I'm just really grateful for your time today, Cherie, and tuning in from up there in Minnesota. We should definitely get together, I feel like. So at some point I would love to do that and meet you in person. But until that time, I thank you. I wish you all the best in Nurtured in Nature. I'm excited for your community to benefit from your programming. So thanks so much for all you're doing.
Thank you so much. Thank you for inspiring me too.
Awesome. All right, everybody. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you down the road. Bye-bye.